a little video about shame. And shame is a universal human feeling. Even if you had the greatest childhood ever, it can still be something that comes up. And as an adult, it can be a hard thing to feel, and there's really nowhere to put it when it's big. Besides shame, there's something that's referred to as toxic shame. And that's not being ashamed of something that you've done or a mistake you've made or something you've forgotten to do or a way of embarrassing yourself. That's being ashamed of who you are. A lot of people with really destructive addictions, they find themselves in the realms of toxic shame. The shame about who they are. There is something intrinsically wrong about them. And that belief and that feeling is so overwhelming to live with that the only escape is to escape through substance use or another addictive behavior. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. We're not on the streets injecting drugs, and we're not always feeling amazing about ourselves. We're in here. A lot of times, if you're someone who's experiencing a spiritual awakening, if you're someone who considers yourself an empath or highly sensitive, shame, if we're honest with ourselves, has come up. And it's nice to just try and forget about it as quickly as you can after it passes and kind of shove it back into the shadow. Because it's one of the more uncomfortable things that we can experience as a human being, especially if you find yourself dipping into the realms of toxic shame. Again, shame at who you are, that there is something wrong with you as a human being. No matter how perfectly you could ever act and how successful you could ever be, there's something wrong with you on the inside. When shame comes up, it can feel really ugly. It can feel really nasty. And if you're not someone who's going to run away and distract themselves and pretend you didn't feel or notice anything and just shove it into your shadow, if you're somebody who's committed to self-reflection and to self-compassion and feeling your feelings, shame is going to be one of the hardest ones to sit with. Signs and ways that it can show up for us as adults are thoughts and feelings of being completely inadequate, even if you are somebody who has many gifts and many skills, and even if you've been told otherwise many times. It can also show up if you have constant negative self-talk, if you're terrified of looking stupid, saying the wrong thing in a group situation, and if you feel feelings of worthlessness, even if there are many facts and much evidence to back up that you've contributed plenty, maybe even more than most in life, in relationships, at work, that kind of thing. And so it often doesn't make sense, to have a high achieving person or a person that is very loving and of service who experiences shame, who experiences these feelings of worthlessness. And it can be often confusing if you are that person. Like, why am I experiencing this? Why do I feel this way from time to time? It can get triggered by events where we make mistakes or where we do say something that is embarrassing in some way, It can be overwhelming. For me, I've experienced it when I've done something that I actually thought was the right thing to do, the best response that I knew, and then it was met by, it definitely wasn't the right thing to do. And instead of just being like, oh, okay, thanks for letting me know, show me how I can do it better next time, like, like an appropriate response, it showed up for me in these massive waves of embarrassment where, like, I feel heat in my body, my face flushes, I feel guilty somehow. I feel like I haven't measured up to an appropriate level of something. And it's really all just an internal thing. Often the people around us are really not making a big deal of it at all, but we're experiencing this. And if you found yourself in that kind of a situation, more than likely it goes back to experiences in childhood where, whether it was overt and abusive or just kind of nonchalant, nobody was trying to hurt you, you were shamed as a child for something at an age where you were very tender and very wide open and vulnerable. And from that early time on, in your subconscious, a belief about yourself, not about a behavior that you did that wasn't a good fit. No, your belief about who you are based on that reaction and that feedback from an older person, possibly a caregiver. You started to believe that there was something intrinsically wrong with you, that you were somehow more of a mess than anyone else. And so even if we find ourselves in adulthood, we can be doing things that don't make sense, like over apologizing, overcompensating, doing more than needs to be done just so that we are okay and that we don't have to feel those feelings of toxic shame. It's way easier to be really generous or a great servant or very educated, all these other things, to cover up some sort of inadequacy that really is us running away from shame. So if you're having a spiritual awakening, if you're experiencing life as an empath or a highly sensitive person, and a lot of people that fall in that category do a lot of self-reflection, you might find that as things are revealed to you, as the light of God shines on things that were in the shadow earlier in life, but now they're getting bigger and more pronounced and more obvious, you could find that shame comes up. You could find that you're feeling these feelings of toxic inadequacy, chronic inadequacy, just for existing, but not based on a lot of evidence or facts, just maybe based on someone not receiving you well, or someone giving you, critical comments or negative feedback. That's really not that big of a deal in the scheme of things, but it's triggering what you've always believed deep down. And as we become more and more open spiritually and more aware of the things that we've stuffed into our shadow, addictions, distractions, running away, those things that worked for us before when it came to avoiding feelings of toxic shame, those things don't even really work anymore. If you talk to a lot of people who have been on a spiritual awakening path for a long time, they don't even bother with substances anymore, because they've found that even when using, substances to try and numb out, they're still feeling the big feelings that they used to be able to use the substances to avoid, And so we get to a point where our distractions, us trying to run away by doing these different things, they don't even work anymore, because that light of God is becoming so bright. And so if you're someone who's found yourself in a tight place where your feelings of chronic inadequacy feel really big, feel like they're in the spotlight, and feel like a tight squeeze, feel like when is this going to end, then you're in the right place. You're in the right place that feels so wrong. It means you've gotten to a point in your spiritual journey where some of the most tender things that you've stuffed way, way far away and deep down, it's safe for those things to be shown to you. You've gotten to a point where you can handle seeing and feeling what that younger version of yourself didn't have the support to see and feel back then. So this is a message for anybody who's finding themselves sitting with really heavy feelings of shame. First of all, the lighter side of shame is humility. The light side of shame is humility. So instead of going so deep down and telling ourselves stories about how we are so small and we are so inadequate and we always screw things up and da-da-da-da-da, how can we take that story and call it for what it is, just a story, and be like, how can I really sit with some beautiful energies of humility where I'm not perfect, I don't know everything, I make mistakes. Not everybody's going to like my work and admire my work. Not everybody's going to like being around me. That's okay. There's a lot of people that do. There's a lot of things that I do well. And I appreciate the humility of that. I'm no different than any other human being in that regard. How can we shift into growing our humility? And not humility where we're like, oh, I'm so small, I'm not important. No, the humility where we just think of ourselves less. We think of ourselves less whether it's good or bad. We focus on, what's going on around us and the present moment and not all the stories. How can we sink into a nice balanced humility? And with that, noticing how some of us who love to try and avoid toxic shame wire ourselves for perfectionism. We hold ourselves to a really high standard of doing everything by the book, making sure we don't offend anybody. We get everywhere on time. We, all this kind of stuff where really, like, in the scheme of things, do all those things really matter? Having respect, having honor, having good intentions, doing our best matters, but being perfect, like, that's a lot of pressure. So when we do make these mistakes and we do feel a lot of shame, it's a reminder that can we come back into a little bit more balance when it comes to this, like, pushing ourselves towards perfection. And then what can be taken from this situation? Okay, a mistake has been made, someone's been offended, someone's made a criticism. Okay, yeah, it felt horrible. It triggered a ton of toxic shame that really isn't related to the event. It's really related to something that's buried deep down. So in that case, toxic shame from way in the past has been triggered. So it's like an opportunity. Wow, I carry this around, this way of overreacting to criticism, overreacting to my own mistakes. Okay, so there must be something there. There's something hiding in the subconscious. There's something hiding in the shadow that's been pushing me to be perfectionist, pushing me to be distracting and going into escapism so I don't feel this. What a great opportunity to notice that shame has been hiding out in the shadows. This is an opportunity. And as with the practice of alchemy and shadow work, I've talked about it in some of my other videos, when something really distressing comes up, a really distressing feeling that feels hard to handle, like shame, my best go-to option is to feel the feelings. To feel the feelings, to do the opposite of running away. To take a few minutes alone and identify the feeling. I'm feeling shame. In my body, it feels like a blow to the gut or a clenching in the heart. This is what I'm feeling in my body. Maybe a little bit of stomach upset. Okay. When did this start? Oh, I don't remember. No, really. When's the earliest time in life that I remember feeling shame about existing? Well, the earliest that I could remember was being at a family gathering around a bunch of adults, and one of my caregivers told a story about something that I had said that where I used the wrong word in a sentence, and it was kind of funny to the adults, like the way that I used the word. And I didn't understand that I had used the wrong word in the sentence and that it would sound really funny, that it would be like, a pun or something. And so the whole group is laughing and laughing and laughing. Okay, that felt horrible. I didn't even know what they were laughing about. Really, I still didn't know what mistake I had made. I was still, like 2 or 3 years old and learning the English language. And I was, the butt of some joke. No one meant any harm, but that was the first moment that I remember feeling extremely shameful about doing my very best at speaking, and I had made a mistake. So it can be something really small like that. And then feeling those big feelings, feeling the shame that happened then, feeling the shame that's coming up today, and being like, wow, that's hard. That was hard to feel as a child. I had no control over that situation. That was really tough. In this moment, I'm going to do what I know to do best as a shadow worker, as a light worker, as all of these things that we do. And I'm going to switch to my heart center. I've noticed the shames here. And I'm going to put my hand on my chest. I'm going to take a deep breath and breathe into my heart space. I'm going to feel the warmth below my hand physically. I'm going to feel the warmth below my hand emotionally and spiritually, knowing that my heart had good intentions. Back then, the first time I felt shame as a little person, I had good intentions. I was trying to speak the English language. This week, when I made a mistake and what I did, and I thought I was doing the right thing, but it seemed to be the wrong thing, and it was brought to my attention, and I felt really, really embarrassed and overwhelmed. I had the right intentions. I actually thought I was doing the best thing I could in that scenario. Wow. So my heart had the right intentions both times. My heart's not going to condemn me. Feeling the warm glow, feeling the love in my heart that goes along with having the good intentions. Whether I'm a child or I'm just an adult experiencing my inner child. Really leaning into the innocence of my heart. Really leaning into the innocence of my heart there. Even if I've done something that wasn't even of the purest of intentions, even then, I've probably done that out of fear. I've probably done that without thinking. And if I could do it again, I would try with even better intentions, Really knowing and sinking into our identity as the innocent child with innocent intentions. Seeing what I can take from the situation. Okay, that didn't go very well. What can I kind of extract and pull out of there so that I don't have to relive that again. So I think that's all. I think that's all about shame. Yeah, and just a word for those brothers and sisters out there who experienced toxic shame as a young child, and it wasn't so innocent from parents or caregivers. It was abusive, the way that you were singled out, embarrassed, or ashamed. To know that any shame dumped on you in those kind of situations when you were a young child was dumped on you because you were in the presence of adults who did not have the ability to not project their stuff onto a child. You know, you may have been teased by a parent or a caregiver in public and it was nasty. And it was at your expense in order for maybe their friends or whoever other adults in the room got a good laugh. And you were the butt of the joke, or worse, or worse. So that had nothing to do with you. And that is the toxic shame that leads us down rabbit holes of addictions, of disorders, of mental health problems. So you especially know that you were a child, that you had good intentions. You had childlike, innocent intentions. And you really, really deserve to reconnect with your heart. Really go into your heart whenever you can. Really get used to going there when that shame comes up. And it does get easier. It does get easier. Once that light of God gets shining on it, and it gets really uncomfortable and really like a tight squeeze, getting in the routine of feeling it for what it is, breathing through it, and then going straight to your heart, who you really are, and kind of getting in that flow where until it becomes automatic, it will lose its power over you. It'll lose its power over you. Even if it comes up, it'll be less intense over time. It'll pass more quickly, and your heart will start to take the driver's seat. That's where we want to get to.